and then hand it over.
Okay, sounds good. Just let me know when you guys are good. All right, perfect.
All right. Hey, GM everyone. Welcome to another week of demos by BanklessDAO and Fight Club, where we get to learn about exciting Web3 tools with demos taking place every Wednesday here in the amphitheater. Today, we are joined by Salman Sayed, who is joining us from Fortiphy, which is an AI-enabled smart contract auditor, like Grammarly, but for blockchain developers to identify and remediate security vulnerabilities in smart contracts. Excited to learn about Fortiphy. Before we begin, just a disclaimer that nothing we discuss is going to be financial advice. We're all here to learn about what's new and latest in Web3. Thank you to everyone who have joined us today. The demo is also being streamed here on the Fight Club YouTube channel, and will be available to watch for whoever has missed the demo. If you have any questions, please do feel free to leave them in the chat, and also you're most welcome to join us here on the stage to ask your questions. All right, Salman, over to you.
Perfect, sounds good. All right, so hi everyone, my name is Salman. First off, would like to thank the Bankless team and members at the BanklessDAO for giving us this opportunity to host this demo with you guys. Super excited for that. I'd like to give you guys a quick background rundown of myself and then my co-founder Mohammed, and then we'll dive right into it. So my name is Salman. I was previously a blockchain security engineer, worked in multiple fintech companies in the security role as well in software engineering, and now I'm building Fortiphy, which is a AI-enabled smart contract auditor with more products coming with my co-founder Mohammed. And now over to Mohammed.
Yeah, so hi guys, I'm Mohammed. I'm the CEO at Fortiphy. We are building Fortiphy. A little bit about me: I am a 2x founder, and I'm building Fortiphy with Salman. And the whole, the reason why we're building this is to support developer community, and by providing them with tools which can help them be better at their job while keeping security at the forefront. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Okay, so we'll dive into the presentation now. So we gave you guys a quick overview of our backgrounds, as well as how we look. And now let's dive into the contents. So basically today we'll be covering a quick brief introduction to what blockchain security is, what smart contract security is, some of the common vulnerabilities that we've seen in the space, recent hacks that have happened in the past 3 to 5 years, and then as well as a live demo of Fortiphy and how to use it if you're a dev. Now, before we start, we have a form over here. This form will be used to essentially give access to people that are using Fortiphy as part of this demo. So if Mohammed, you could share the form in the chat. Perfect. Great. So once that form is filled out, we'll give you guys access or a license to use Fortiphy exclusively for the Bankless community so that you guys can test it out. Now let's start with a quick introduction to what blockchain security is. Now, blockchain security, what it is it typically is divided into about 6 to 7 categories. We start with traditional areas like identity and access management, key management when you're setting up validators for staking, as an example, data privacy, secure communication, my personal favorite, smart contract security, and then transaction endorsement. And primarily the focus of blockchain security from the past has been mostly around the trade of money, the trade of value or exchange of tokens, primarily around the DeFi sector and NFTs, as well as security for cross-chain bridges, as we've seen them being a high target for hacks by attackers as well. Let's talk about smart contract security. Now, we know that smart contracts are contractual code agreements written in a language such as Solidity to support blockchains such as Ethereum. A lot of these smart contracts store a large amount of value and can be used to transfer value. Now, what we've seen is typically you can't change smart contracts after they have been deployed, except for some exceptions like upgradable contracts. And then what we've seen is that in 2022, we saw over $3 billion being compromised and lost due to smart contract hacks, which is exactly why we also exist because this is an area that needs that needs much attention and hasn't been worked upon that much. Some of the common smart contract vulnerabilities that we see in the space are reentrancy, access control issues, and then using things like a floating pragma or outdated compiler versions. As a developer, it's very easy sometimes to miss these things while you're pushing out code, while you're deploying code. So let's start with the first type of vulnerability. So this is the most common one that we've seen in the space that we've read about, being reentrancy. So the idea here is that you have a adversary or a bad actor that makes a call on a contract. Let's call that contract X, right? To transfer funds to a second contract. In this case, let's call that contract Y. What happens is the initial contract determines whether the attacker has the right means or the right funds to transfer the funds to contract Y. Once the second contract that you are transferring funds to Y receives the funds, what it does is it executes a callback function. Now this callback function, as the name suggests, callback, calls back into the first contract before the balance is updated, right? So imagine, going to an ATM and you would like to withdraw $100, right? And once you've withdrawn $100 and that is your limit and your bank account has $400, you can recursively call back into the account even though your limit has been reached and you've withdrawn the amount that you were allowed to withdraw, as an example. This process is referred to as a recursive process and is done to exhaust all of the funds that are present in a specific contract, or as an example, imagine a wallet that is being drained. Now, since the user's balance is not set to 0 until the very end of the function, the second function, what happens is any invocations that happen after the first one will still succeed and will withdraw the balance over and over again. To remediate against this, we have to apply something called the check and effects interaction pattern that we see in the Solidity documentation. So here is an example. Let's look at the first picture at the top here. So here we see that the balance is being updated after the call is made, which is a classic example of a reentrancy vulnerability. And again, like as I mentioned earlier, the caller's code is executed and can call withdraw balance again and again. In the second example, the balance is being updated prior to the transfer call is made, therefore preventing such a vulnerability to take place. Now let's move to the second most common type of vulnerability that we've seen, so access control. Now, just like any other software or any other system, each individual, each function within a piece of code can have multiple levels of access control. And access control vulnerabilities, what they allow is they allow users that are not authorized to access or essentially modify data or specific functions through security issues. In the case of smart contracts, typically what we see is access control issues come in two forms. One is called missed modifiers. So essentially not including the appropriate modifier or level of access for a function. I'll be covering an example of that shortly. And the second is overpowered roles. Now, overpowered roles are essentially the idea that a user has too much power with what they can do. And here we come across a security principle, which is called least privilege, which essentially means that a user or a single individual should only have access to the specific data or applications that they are required or that are needed to complete a specific task. To remediate this, as we all know, OpenZeppelin has a vast library, which also consists of different libraries and access for access control. Now let's look over an example over here. This specific function burn, what it does is, this was used in the ShadowFi hack where it allowed anyone to call the burn function and burn the tokens. This led to creating inflation and hence increased the worth of the token. The issue in this specific function is that it is public, right? So imagine you have deployed a smart contract and anyone can just burn the tokens, right? Obviously, that's not a functionality that you would want. You would maybe want it for a specific type or a specific access of a user, and not make it public. And this led to the Shadowfi hack, which we now know. Let's move to the floating pragma issue. So the idea is when you deploy smart contracts should be deployed with the same compiler version. And the reason for that is that when you deploy a smart contract with the same compiler version, or flags that you can ensure that they have been tested thoroughly. Let's say you're deploying a smart contract with a very recent version, it may not have been tested as thoroughly for security issues, or bugs or patches may not have been made. Locking the pragma, which is essentially you giving a fixed pragma, helps to basically, in a way, ensure that the contract that you are deploying does not introduce or does not contain any bugs for that specific version that is being deployed. The remediation for this, as mentioned earlier, is using a fixed pragma statement. Here is an example of that at the top, where you're using a floating pragma, and at the bottom where we're using a fixed pragma. Recent hacks that we've seen that have happened are starting with the Binance hack, which is a cross-chain bridge hack, and this hack happened because of a bug in the smart contract where hackers could basically forge transactions and transfer funds into their wallets. And then we have the Poly network hack, which is also quite infamous, and this happened due to the mismanagement of access rights between two important Poly network smart contracts. Lastly, we have the Groom Finance hack, and this was as a result of the re-entrancy vulnerability that we covered earlier. And the very last one, which is one of my personal favorite case studies, the DAO hack, which caused the fork of Ethereum, happened due to the re-entrancy vulnerability and was a milestone in shifting users and engineers and developers' thoughts towards security and how to approach it. If you guys are interested in keeping up with the latest or recent hacks that happen and seeing like a sort of a leaderboard, Rect is a website that I would highly suggest. It covers in detail what went down and how much loss incurred. All right, so some key takeaways out of what we've chatted about so far is that instead of deploying and testing everything and then looking at security at the end, we should employ a shift left mindset, meaning that you should take care of security from the get-go. Think like a hacker. Think about where you can exploit a specific function or what considerations need to be made prior to shipping code, prior to committing it, prior to deploying it. As a developer, it is very important to know what vulnerabilities can exist in a contract and how you can prevent them, which is also where we come in, where we help you do exactly that. All right, now before I start, any questions or any thoughts on anything that we've chatted about so far? If not, then I'd love to get into the live session and show you a quick demo of how to get an audit for a smart contract.
I don't see any questions on the chat, but just a question that I had is how common is the callback vulnerability if you interact with, if you have a transaction and that leading to a callback vulnerability that you described first?
Yeah, so it wasn't until much recently where vulnerabilities like re-entrancy were the leading reason for smart contracts being hacked. So right now it's not super common. It still happens, but if we look maybe a year or 2 years back, it was very significant. And now there's other attacks that are coming out, but re-entrancy is still very much something that exists. The only difference is that companies like OpenZeppelin, as an example, provide specific guards to prevent that. So it's easier from a developer standpoint to do as much as you can to prevent something like this happening again.
Got it. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, just checking, Mohammed, are you getting signups on this sheet?
Yep, I have one by Alan Zinn. Alan Zinn, your email has been allotted the license, so you'll be able to follow along if you choose to.
Perfect.
And other people, if you sign up, I can allocate a license to your email that you can use to access Fortiphy for free.
Perfect, sounds good. Okay, so I'm going to shift my screen now to the API page. So essentially, this is our API documentation page, fortify.remediate.io. Here, when we begin, we give users a demo of how to use Fortiphy to audit their smart contracts. And then we also talk about using the graphical user interface to create an account by filling in 5 fields like your first name, last name, username, email, password. And then we have a way to authenticate using a token. And then there's 2 endpoints that you can use to analyze your smart contracts for security. One is called test files, and the other one is called test file zip. I will cover the difference shortly once we get into the practical demo. And then let's say you're someone who's more technically inclined. You can use curl within your integrated development environment, like VS Code as an example, or Atom, to make requests to a specific API endpoint to complete the tasks that a user would complete using the graphical user interface. And the output looks something like this, where you have the description of the issue, the impact confidence, remediation, and the line numbers that are being impacted. Now, I'd like to do a live example. So here, if you're new to the API page, please go ahead and create a user. Once you fill in these 5 fields, you'll have an account. Now, for the sake of this demo, I'm going to use a test account. So here, for example, I will enter in my test account credentials and then hit try it. Now, this is going to generate a access token that is valid for 24 hours. Once I click on Analyze, the test files endpoint allows me to individually upload smart contracts. So here, first what we have to do is paste the access token and click Add File. And then I select the contract that I would like to get analyzed. I select it first and I upload it first. Now, any other subsequent contracts that you are selecting are contracts that are being imported into the first one. In this case, coin is being imported into wallet. At the moment, we support analyzing 1 contract at a time. In the very near future, we'll be giving the functionality of analyzing multiple contracts at the same time. Once you have uploaded all the required contracts, you hit try it. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to give you a JSON output of the description, impact, confidence, and remediation of the security issues. So here, for example, this specific contract has a vulnerability where a specific function is ignoring a return value. We identify that, and then we provide a remediation for it, as well as the line numbers that are being impacted by it. Another cool thing that Fortiphy does is it checks for gas efficiency issues. So here, for example, non-strict inequalities are being used within a specific line of code, and then we give a suggestion as to what to replace that with, and X amount of gas that can be saved. Same thing you can do with the zip endpoint, where all you do is type in the name of the contract you want to analyze, hit the upload button, compress both files, hit enter, hit try it, and the result you'll be getting is the same that you got on test files. So that is a quick demo of how Fortiphy works. I hope that was helpful.
Awesome.
Stop sharing my screen.
Can you, you can, okay. Can you take us through like behind the scenes of the AI? How did you all build this, and what is kind of the
Sure.
Yeah,
for sure. So essentially, you'd like to understand like what is going on in the back end and how we got to the solution that we did. So essentially, what we did is we have specific strategic partners that we work with. We have been cleaning up data for a long time, and what we do is basically use that cleaned up data that we've collected, that we've refined to fine-tune our AI model, and then provide the results through the fine-tuned model. That is one component. The second component is we have 85 security vulnerability detectors. These detectors cover various different types of categories like reentrancy, like gas optimizations. And then when we combine both, we provide a comprehensive overview of the security of your smart contract so that the user gets a sort of a double check, right? And now what we're working on is a front end where a user can use Google Auth to sign in and through a click of a button, upload their smart contract and get a more humane explanation of the vulnerabilities that exist.
and how does like this AI model compare to like a human who would be auditing a contract?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
How would this method compare to doing this like by an actual person?
For sure. Yeah. So if you are working with a specific auditing company, it is very reasonable to expect to have to wait up to 6 months to pencil in a audit date and 2 to 4 weeks to get feedback on your smart contract. How this compares to that is one, we provide real-time feedback, as in that it lets you really understand what the security issues are on the go instead of having to wait. And secondly, by using the AI model, which is the nice part, we are able to identify vulnerabilities at scale. And what I mean by that is when you have a hard-coded detector that looks for a specific type or a specific pattern of a vulnerability, the chances of that catching a vulnerability and providing or producing false positives is significantly higher. And the data that we've collected and how we've cleaned it up and how we fine-tune the model allows the model to basically be exposed to hundreds of thousands of examples that are labeled and categorized in different vulnerability categories. So in that sense, it really helps you test your smart contract against thousands of various examples of smart contracts that have been exploited, that have vulnerabilities, and then from there, pick out and identify which ones could exist in your contract or which ones do exist in your contract.
Got it. Amazing. I'll get to the next question, but I think you can still continue to keep your screen share on if you want to show the website or something.
Oh yeah, for sure.
For this, yeah, for the stream it will be. So we have a question from CryptoDad asking how long. So like, what is this answer? How long does it usually take? The audit process take?
Of the API?
Audit process.
Oh, okay. Yeah, to audit a smart contract, if you look at a traditional auditor, you can expect to hear back between anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. 2 weeks being the earliest, 4 weeks being usually like the later period. So that's how long a manual audit would take place. The typical auditing process is audit request comes in. There are engineers that pair up to audit a smart contract. Automated component is done to basically run open source tools to audit the smart contract, and then manual auditing is done where each engineer or auditor will look at specific functions, critical lines of code to audit it. What we're saying is we're not replacing the manual auditors, we're augmenting their process and we're letting users catch these vulnerabilities faster, and as a result, if they choose to get a manual audit, they'll get the most value for their money because they have already caught a lot of the vulnerabilities that the auditor would using the automated approach that they have.
Got it. Just a suggestion to change the screen from Discord to your website.
Oh, I thought it was my website. Sorry. All right.
Yeah.
How about now?
We have a loading for me, but should be good. We have a question from NF Tinker. Are you using your AI to explore potential future vulnerabilities? How are you front running the possible other attacks?
Yeah. So what we're doing right now is we're looking at pre-deployment at the moment. But right now we're doing some R&D to look at post-deployment and see how, once a contract has been deployed, can we identify whether it's malicious or not. Predicting any 0 days or new attacks that may happen is something that we're not working on at the moment. What we are working on is also a entire product suite. So imagine having the auditor like Fortiphy, and then having a unit test generation bot or AI model with you, and then having a risk detection ML model. So with these three products within our product suite, a developer could basically first audit their smart contract, get a Truffle, Hard Hat, Foundry test suite to test it against business logic or requirements of the client. And then finally, once they deploy it, use our ML model to determine what the risk of it being malicious is or not. So that is the current state of our product and where we're going.
Awesome. Curious, since how long have you all been building this product?
Yeah, so we've been working on this since September 2022. And since then, we've released the API, we've done 900 audits, 13 pilots, closed a paid customer, and just you're really pushing as much as possible, devs' lives easier.
Awesome. Sounds like a great product to me.
For sure.
Friends,
Appreciate it.
anyone have any questions, please do. And also, I think people who watch it on the stream later from the InfoSec department might come in with questions, and we'll connect you to them.
Perfect.
I was wondering just generally, like I think nowadays in crypto, like the security, like this hack seems to be like so frequent. Even the most, you know, people who are like quite savvy also find themselves vulnerable to security hacks. What is the state of like why is this happening? Like are the hackers getting like more innovative by the day? Why, I mean, would you have any thoughts on like the innovation, I guess, in this?
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. So for languages like Solidity, you may have noticed that a lot of companies are choosing not to go with Solidity because inherently it has a lot of like security concerns or issues. The upside though is that because most of the smart contracts that are currently deployed, specifically talking about Ethereum around 44 to 45 million, are deployed on Solidity, right? So where from our perspective the issues are happening is right in the development phase, right? When you're developing these smart contracts, if a developer has to take 25 to 30 minutes to set up an open source tool, they might as well even give up in doing that, right? Because it hinders their development time, their development process. And on the other hand, if they have to wait for an auditor to get back to them each time to make a change, that is also a problem because by the time the auditor gets back, they may introduce a new vulnerability and they may already have been compromised. So the issue from our standpoint and where we stand is right in the development phase where you basically start coding your smart contract, which is exactly the reason why we're basically giving users the ability to do all the due diligence that they can prior to deploying it.
Got it. Got it. Another question that NF Tinker has, which okay, it looks like it has been answered. If this is currently on Solidity only,
Yeah,
are
so
you
right
currently
now,
working with Viper or other chains?
for sure. So right now we are supporting Solidity, but we will be supporting in the future we'll be supporting Rust, Go, and Move to support other chains like Solana as an example. The idea is to develop a solid playbook for Solidity since most of the contracts are deployed there and there's a lot of familiarity around it, and then replicate the same for other languages.
Got it. Got it. Um, I think this has been awesome. If there's anything else you'd like to share with us?
Yep, I think I'm
Um,
good in mind, Mohammed.
I yeah, I would like to just jump in here. So anybody who comes through Bankless, we're more than willing to give you access to Fortiphy, premium Fortiphy for free. Just if you can submit the form, we will make sure to give you access to that. I'm gonna one more time send the form, license form. So if you can just, oh, sorry, I'm just gonna send it in the chat. Just give me 1 second. And if you can submit that form, I will make sure that you have a license attached to it.
Awesome. Another question from NF Tinker, who I think you should connect with, is the co-founder of White Hat DAO, uh, who conduct smart contract auditing, security auditing for various projects. The question is, are you partnering with any VC funds for analysis?
Yes, we are partnering with VC funds and DAOs that are providing auditing services and all. And I think if you have some opportunities, I would love to have that conversation with you. And Salman, if you can connect us, Salman from the Bankless DAO, if you can connect us, that would be great. Or if you can share your contact information, I can reach out to you personally. I also know that you have signed up. So if that's the best email, I can reach out to you on that email as well. Okay, perfect. That works perfectly.
Awesome. We'll upload this form in the InfoSec department for them to for them to fill out and find out about. All right, friends. If there is nothing more to show, I think this has been great. Great information, great presentation um, on security vulnerabilities in crypto in general. And also thank you for taking us through Fortiphy and what you're building.
For sure.
Everybody listening, if you wanna get access to this platform, please fill out the form. And like I said at the start, none of this has been financial advice, but I'm very happy to learn about what the team here is building. Thank you everybody for joining us for the Fortiphy demo. We will shortly be having a next demo of native.org. Do stick around or join us in 10 minutes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah, take care.
Good day.